Well, renewed diplomatic efforts to negotiate a truce in Gaza and the exchange of Palestinian prisoners with Israeli captives are moving forward. Al Jazeera has learned that talks between Qatari mediators, the Mossad and the CIA in Warsaw were positive. Hamas is pushing for a permanent ceasefire, but Israel's far-right coalition government has publicly stated that they expect the war to continue. Israeli media are reporting that they want the next deal to include 30 to 40 captives from the 128 who remain inside Gaza. They also want it to include women, the elderly, and captives in need of medical attention. Well, let's speak to our correspondent, Hashem Ahelbarra. It's your reporting that this is based on. What more can you tell us?
So basically, there has been a series of meetings between senior officials that paved the way to the trilateral meeting that took place on Monday in Warsaw. And it was positive, and it has triggered a new push to try to explore the potential for a new agreement. This agreement is going to be based, according to our sources, on two key aspects, which is the prisoners' exchange and a ceasefire. Why it's very important, we'll talk about it later in details. On last Friday, there's been a meeting between Qatar's Prime Minister and Mossad chief in Europe. So this build-up is a strong indication that we're likely to see some announcement in the upcoming days on a deal. The problem as we speak now is on the different interpretations of both the Israelis and Hamas. Hamas insists this time it is not going to be a prisoners' exchange solely. It is going to be based on a permanent ceasefire. Of course, it will boil down on whether the Qataris ultimately will be able to narrow down the differences between the Israelis and Hamas. But we're getting strong indications that this time there is a push by all the parties to come up with an agreement.
Well, I mean, that position, that permanent ceasefire position from Hamas is one that is entirely different from the Israeli position, which is to continue prosecuting this war, although the Israeli government is under an enormous amount of pressure to get more of these captives back. Does that pressure, does a potential big price in terms of, for the Israelis, in terms of Palestinian prisoners in the opposite direction, could that help narrow the gap? I mean, how do those two very different positions get
These are
reached?
extraordinary moments for all the parties. Hamas understands in particular the issues at stake for the Israelis and for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. In particular, this explains why Ismail Haniyeh, the head of the Hamas political bureau, is in Egypt today. And he is going to talk to the Egyptians because, you know, there are different aspects to the agreement. When you talk about the prisoners' exchange, this is where the Egyptians will be pretty much involved, because when it comes to the release and to their movement and to their route all the way from Gaza into Israel, similar to what we saw during the previous agreement. So there is, this time, a potential for an agreement. It just remains to be seen what will be the new criteria. Last time it was based on 1 in exchange for 3. This time it's going to be different. Hamas, as far as we understand, is yet to tell us exactly its own demands. The Qataris, they have them, they're discussing them now with all the parties, but they are very tight-lipped on those very details because they are very sensitive. But they have been saying in the past that when it comes to this final stage, it's going to be all for all. Something that has been brushed aside by the Israelis in the past. Are they likely to give some concessions? I think the Israelis are also willing to move ahead with something much bigger, more significant. Harry, ultimately, when it comes to this deal, there is absolutely no way I can see the Qataris heavily involved without strong guarantees this time from the Americans in particular and the Israelis that if we have a deal, this deal has to hold. They cannot afford to see this collapsing every now and then, because it's going to be the very final phase of what could perhaps be a long ceasefire.
Fascinating stuff. Thank you very much, Hashem Ahelbarra.